Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my channel. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe, like all my content, put all your comments and suggestions in the section below, and please check out all of my other content when you're done watching this video. And in today's video, we're going to be going over some early voting data that we have in 4 or 5 main states that it has come out in. Many states do not have the option where we can actually see the early voting data as it comes in. But for the states that we could see it, we are going to take a look at them. And the states that we are going to be looking at are Virginia, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and North Carolina. So all states around the east coast of the US, in addition to Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's a state that doesn't register my party, but we're still going to be able to take a look at what we have so far. And I already have this map filled out with all the likely and safe states. So what we have left is basically going to be the most competitive states. All these states in my projection are going to be going for each candidate by 6 points or left. And they do include Nebraska second and Maine at large. But we might as well just fill the lean states. Nebraska second, I do think is going to go for Harris. And Maine at large, I also is going to think is going to go for Harris. And since we don't have really early data out of these states, we're just going to go and fill them out for Kamala Harris, as well as a state of Minnesota. But we're going to leave the state of Virginia blank because we're actually going to go to it right now and check out some early voting data. And we do have this modeled out by this person over here, Christian Hines. He is modeling out elections. He predicted many elections in the past correctly, including 2021 with Glenn Youngkin winning 2020. And in 2024, he also has modeled out a lot of data for us to check out here. We do have a 60-40 spread right now. So 60% of these early votes are Democrats and then 40% are GOP or Republicans. And this is as of today, obviously. And what is important about this post and what this data shows us is that these low propensity voters are splitting a lot more Republican than Democrat. So these are the amount of elections that these voters voted for. So voters that voted for the last 4 of the 4 elections, they do favor Democrats, 170,000 to 115. The 3 of the last 4 elections favor Democrats, 50 to 38, which is a smaller margin. 2 out of 4 also favor Democrats by also a smaller margin of around 4,000. And then we have 1 out of 4, which favors Democrats by around 500. And then we have 0 out of 4, which favors Republicans around 2 to 3 times more than Democrats. And what this is showing us is that Republicans are getting out those voters that have never voted before. And this is actually only for early voting. And we know early voting favors Democrats a lot. And if we check out in the past, we can see in 2021, when Glenn Youngkin won, 65% of the early voting was for Democrats and 34% was for the GOP. And this is, we have Republicans gaining 5, Democrats losing 5 so far. We'll see how this goes. And so this mirrors the exact same results in 2023. Virginia had 2023 elections, as we all know. The state house and the state senate, and those are the exact same as with the data we have now, which is around 60-ish to 40-ish. And the results back then actually showed us something like this. And in 2023, the state senate was won by Democrats by 1 seat, and the House of Delegates was won by Democrats by 1 seat, which would mean in the popular vote, this is actually a very close race. Democrats probably won it by around a few points, maybe closer to 2 to 5, I would say. So if that translates similar to how it's going to translate to this election, we're going to see that Republicans are going to catch up a lot in those on-person votes, which we always expect. Republicans always catch up in the in-person votes and on election day, and it'll end up being a race a lot closer than this 2020 race. But once again, we are still early. People still have a lot more time to go and vote, so we're going to continue to monitor that as it goes on. So on our map, we do expect Republicans to gain a lot. We do not expect Kamala Harris to win by the same amount that Joe Biden did, by 10 points. And this would make me place the state of Virginia in the lean column for Democrats between 4 to 6 points as of right now, around half of what Joe Biden wanted by end 2020. A big surprise. And this leaves us with the battleground states that we are all very used to seeing. And we do have this website, votehub.com, that actually tracks a lot of these states that we've been wanting to see. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Florida, and North Carolina are the ones right now that are available. Keep in mind, these are obviously early numbers, but they won't change too much from then until election day, With the state of Pennsylvania, we have seen that every single day Republicans have been gaining in the requests against Democrats. I think today they gained another half a point. And so they're eating into this margin that Democrats have to build every election cycle. Right now, Democrats have almost 1 million requests, 950,000. Republicans have 427,000. So they're about 500,000 down. And if we check in 2020 the requests, because this data is always available to us, we can see the requests here were 63% Democrat and 25% Republican. So far, Democrats are down around a point or two, and Republicans are up around 2 points. And a change of around 4 points would automatically right there give the election. And Democrats had 950,000 requests as of now. And in 2020, they had 1.9 million. They had almost 2 million requests, and they are not going to reach that total. They are down 1 million votes from what they were in 2020, and they have to make that up in other ways. But as we all know, the in-person election vote is heavily skewed towards Republicans. We all know that Biden ended up winning by a 40-point margin. He won by a 1-point margin. So we should expect a lot of these early votes to be able to come in favor of Trump. And in that scenario, this will not be enough for Democrats. Republicans are at 427,000. They're down around 300,000. So Democrats are down about 1 million requests, and Republicans are down about 300,000. And that right there, combined with the polls that we do have that are really tied, the past, most of them have Trump up. And I actually removed the last bottom ones. The older ones have been removed, and Trump has actually taken the lead in the state of Pennsylvania as we speak. This has just happened right now. We only have 2 polls with Harris up, and one of them is an outlier from Bloomberg that has her up by 5. And so on our map, because of all this, we do have Pennsylvania tilting in Trump's column by around 0 to 2% on this map, which would give him a huge boost and probably give him around a 90% chance to win the election. Moving now to the next state, and this is going to be a fairly quick one because, as I explained, this state does not register by party, and we all know that in Wisconsin, this race is going to be extremely close. Right now, we do have 495,000 requests. If we check the requests back in the 2020 election, we're going to see a number a lot higher. The requests are 1.4 million. So we had 1.4 million requests in Wisconsin in the 2020 election. Right now, we're only at 500,000, and people do not have much time to be able to request their ballot. I believe it's only a few weeks at most to request their ballot, so we're not going to see, once again, the turnout among a lot of people, Republicans and Democrats. But since we're talking about early voting data, and these are absentee ballots that skew to Democrats heavily, as we saw in the 2020 election in the state of Pennsylvania, for example, this does seem pretty worrisome for Democrats since they cannot get those requests similar to what they were in 2020. As once again, as we can see that in the early in-person votes, Republicans, Donald Trump especially, caught up, and he only lost the state by 20,000 votes. So another thing that Democrats really need to look out for in the state of Pennsylvania. And this is also a state that we've seen very, very tight polling. Right now, it is a 0.8 race for Harris. And remember, back in 2020 and in 2016, at this time, we had Biden and Clinton leading by 5 to 6 points. Very worrisome sign for her, since she's not even up by 1 point in a state that Democrats always are overestimated by the most out of any country. And for all those reasons, once again, I do put Wisconsin in the tilt column between 0 and 2 points for the former president. Next, we're going to move to a state that is already filled in this map for likely for Donald Trump between 6 to 12 points, but we still have a lot of early data out of Florida, so we're going to be checking that out right now just to give you guys a little bit of a gauge on how this state might vote. And right now in the requests, we see here Democrats at 41.9% and Republicans are at 37.1%. Unlike a lot of other states, the population of Florida is very spread out. So these bubbles are not so centered along like a few counties. These bubbles are very spread out. We see here the West Coast has a lot of votes, and those are more conservative, obviously. And you have the more liberal southeastern part of Florida. As we know, Miami-Dade is not as liberal as it used to be. And in our mail votes by party, right now we have 2.8 million that have been requested, 306,000 that have been returned. And these are all obviously absentee votes. All of them are mail-in, and we have not had any early votes. And we will get to those once that starts. But looking right now at the votes, we see Democrats with a small, around 3-point lead. The counties that have reported the most so far are Palm Beach and Miami-Dade, and then Pinellas after that. Let's go to 2020 and let's see where the state of Florida was back then. The mail-in votes requested, we see Democrats at 44.7, Republicans at 31.2, but I believe this is talking about the return ballots. Yeah, I think these are return ballots. So we're going to have to go to the return ballots and see here the 45.3 to 31.1. So Democrats had around a 14-point lead in the requests, and now they have a 3-point lead. Now let's talk about a collapse among the Democratic Party in one state, and that would be the state of Florida, which has gone from D+14 to D+3. And that makes you wonder, what is going to happen now with these in-person votes? We're going to get these early in-person votes now. And as we know from every election cycle that we've been through, Republicans are always down in the early votes. And then look at this, in the in-person votes, it's the complete opposite. 45 to 32. So if we see all these mail-in votes favor Democrats by such a smaller amount, and these in-person votes possibly staying the same, and I expect them to actually look even better for Republicans since the states gained almost 1 million registered Republicans. I think even more than 1 million, maybe 1.1 million as of now. And we're going to see a state that went from R plus 3.5 to probably even R plus 10. And speaking of Florida, we actually had a poll that came out today from the New York Times that has Trump up a whopping 14 points in the state, and that puts him almost 7 points up in the polls. Remember, these polls back in history had Biden and Clinton both winning. I think this is a state that could even be over 10 points for Trump. Looking at these horrific early numbers for the Democrats, and even Miami-Dade here, this is a county that used to be so heavily Democratic, and even in the early votes, Democrats only lead by around 12 points. Obviously, we don't have too many votes out of Pinellas and Tampa, but look at this, a tied vote in Pinellas in the early votes. In Pasco County that favors Democrats, Republicans by a little bit. In Tampa, we don't have too much voting right now. Democrats not leading by as much as they really should be. So these are all worry signs for Democrats in the state of Florida, but is a state that we know is going to be won by Trump. And I want to get to the final state now, and this is probably a really, really important one that Trump needs to hold. And from these early votes, it's looking like he will hold them because once again, Democrats have collapsed in their early voting numbers. And if we let this load, we're going to be able to see the mail-in votes requested. Over here, we see Democrats at 36%, Republicans at 25%, and other at 39%. And let's compare that to the 2020 election. We're going to see the early votes. If I find North Carolina, we see here the requested votes. We had Democrats at 46%, and Republicans are not even breaking 20. So Democrats at 46 now, they're down 10 points to 36. And Republicans go from 19.8 to 25. And remember, guys, this is a state that Trump already won. And if we're looking at these votes, these early absentee votes that Democrats should be destroying Republicans in, and we see the requests are down significantly, and the total share of votes are also down significantly. We all know the in-person votes are going to be really, really close, and this time are going to be won by Republicans. Republicans are going to win the in-person votes because of the registration changes. The state of North Carolina has seen a lot of new registered Republicans, and the registered Democrats have been going down. A lot of these Democrats here that are in-person voting that seem like they're voting for Biden are actually some of those old school Democrats that actually vote for Republicans but have not changed their registration. Now, 4 years later, many of them have changed their registration, so this in-person vote is going to go for Trump, and we obviously will be finding out when these numbers do come in. But once again, this lead has been cut in half again, where Democrats only lead by 11 points. Back in 2020, they led by around 26 points, which is extremely bad for them looking at these numbers. And that's going to be all for that. And looking at the polls also for the state of North Carolina, it's also looking good for the former president. He leads by 0.6. They maybe seem small, but most polls do have made a consistent tied to 2-point win, and we only have 2 polls that have Harris up. So this is also something that's not looking good for them at all. And putting this on a map, if we take all that data together, it would imply that Trump does hold the state of North Carolina in that lean column, not in tilt column, but I think over 2 points, maybe closer to his 2016 when he won the state by over 3 points. We see something like that happening. He is going to gain in most parts of the state. I do believe that. And he will win the state in the lean column. And when we fill out those states based on the early votes that we do have, Trump is at 264, which means he only needs 1 other state to win. And it could even be the state of Nevada, and he's at 270. But I do think if he wins the state of North Carolina and he wins the state of Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, he will most likely win Georgia and Arizona as well, since the early voting numbers there are probably going to come in soon and they're probably going to look good for Trump. But right now we do have polling, and Trump leads both by 1.4 and 1.5 respectively. So that's some very interesting data that we're going to look over now. But I appreciate all you guys watching this video. Please subscribe, share my content with your friends, put all your comments and suggestions in the section below, and I will check you guys out in the next one.